All right, looking forward to our next conversation. Cody Goodwin covers Alabama football for the 247 affiliate over in Tuscaloosa. Make sure and give him a follow on social media. You can find him at Cody Goodwin, and he is joining us now here on this Wednesday morning from Tuscaloosa to begin to dive into Saturday night. Cody, thanks for the time this morning. Good morning, man.
No, I appreciate you having me. It's going to be a pretty big game on Saturday.
Yes, it will.
It feels like it.
It does. Take me through the history from Alabama's side, at least through this primetime matchup, Cody. This is where this game got to start back in 2011 when it was initially put in this 7 o'clock slot for CBS. Obviously, this has been a game that the college football world has huddled around for the last decade plus. What has been the point of view from the Alabama side of this LSU-Bama matchup over the years?
Yeah, I think you start with the history that, head coach Nick Saban came from LSU, right? Or at least he's got a history there. That's where he won his first collegiate national title. After a few years there, ultimately went to Miami. That didn't work out, came to Tuscaloosa. And, it's largely been, a lot of Alabama success when you look at the history between the two teams since Saban's been in Tuscaloosa. But, LSU tends to get their licks in every now and again, and especially in recent years, right? When, LSU, their national championship team, I think they were the last SEC team to come to Tuscaloosa and beat Alabama, that 2019 team. And then obviously we saw what happened last year with Brian Kelly's first season. So it always seems like not only is this game kind of at the center of the college football universe, or at least the SEC universe, but always seems to carry a lot of big implications, and this year's no different, right? Just with the way that the SEC West has unfolded. And then in the case of Alabama, they need this one to stay in the college football playoff hunt.
Yeah. Last night we saw the initial college football playoff rankings come out. Obviously, we'll get a little thought on that, but what has been the message this week around Alabama? What has been the buildup of this game over the bye week and throughout the first couple of days of game week? What's the message been from the Alabama side leading into Saturday?
Yeah, Saban's very much of the, control what you can control, focus on the task in front of you because, they checked in at number 8, kind of where we thought they'd be. I think generally speaking, if they win out and, that would include a win this weekend, that would include finishing 11-1, that would include, toppling Georgia in the SEC championship game. I think by and large, the dominoes will fall that Alabama should position themselves for a spot in the playoff. That said, that in and of itself is not a guarantee because you still have 3 undefeated, potential conference champs out there, Florida State in the ACC, whoever wins Ohio State, Michigan, and then Washington out in the Pac-12 still undefeated. On top of that, the loss to Texas is still kind of hovering over the program. So, if Texas runs the table and goes undefeated, wins the Big 12, they'll have that head-to-head matchup. But then on top of that, it's no guarantee that Alabama even goes undefeated anyway, right? They got to get through LSU. They got to go on the road to Kentucky. They got to go on the road to Auburn. Funny things always happen in Jordan-Hare. And then there's obviously no guarantee that they would win an SEC title matchup against Georgia. So, very much, kind of be where your feet are mentality, focus on LSU. And really, with the bye week last week, they've been focusing on LSU for 2 weeks. So, that's been very top of mind.
Cody, obviously the matchup that the country is going to be looking at is this LSU offense versus Bama's defense, strength on strength. When you see them matching up, what are some of the things that jump out to you?
Well, you start with Jaden Daniels, right? That guy has been magnificent this season, leads the country in, total offensive yardage. He's the only player in the country with over 3,000 yards of total offense. Leads the country in passer rating, 25-3 touchdown to pick ratio. He's completing 73% of his passes. This is a dude that, he makes the LSU offense go, right? He's the engine. He's got 5 different receivers that have at least 10 receptions, and then that are averaging, north of 17 yards per reception. Logan Diggs, transferred from Notre Dame, has been fantastic on the ground. But I think it really starts with Jaden Daniels. How can you disrupt him? How can you get him out of a rhythm? How can you, keep him in the pocket? Because the moment he gets outside, or if you, are a little bit too aggressive with your pass rush, you get behind him. And if you get behind him or he gets outside and you break contain, that's where Daniels can be very, very good and very, very dangerous. So I think you start there. When it comes to Alabama, this is, strength on strength. It's been kind of fun. I'm not exactly, after you start with Jaden Daniels, I'm not really sure where you go from there because, you can talk about LSU's receivers. I know Alabama really likes their secondary. I know that they lost 4 starters from last year's secondary, but I would argue that top to bottom this year's secondary is just as good and arguably even maybe a little bit more talented, just with Kool-Aid McKinstry, Terrion Arnold. Caleb Downs has been a very impressive true freshman. Alabama's got elite pass rushers with Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell. They have depth along the defensive line. They have talented rotation of inside backers. Like, this is, where would you guys begin after, you start with Jaden Daniels, obviously, but then after that, it's kind of, what's the push and pull going to be like on Saturday? And that'll ultimately dictate who maybe wins that battle. Yeah.
How about on the other side, Cody, from Alabama's offensive approach here, and specifically on the offensive line? This is something that I know that Alabama supporters and people that cover the program are not used to, and the struggles up front, especially from the other side going into a Bama game. You've rarely seen them be vulnerable on the line of scrimmage on the offensive line. What has been the issues there, and what do they look like going into Saturday?
Yeah, at the beginning of the season, they had to replace 3 starters from last year. 2 guys are now in the NFL, Emil Ekiyor and Tyler Steen, and then a third guy, Javion Cohen, transferred to Miami. So, offensive line is one of those units where you kind of need that cohesion. You need the, consistency. Guys got to play with each other, and they just didn't have that the first few weeks. And on top of that, their starting left tackle has been either true freshman Caden Proctor or redshirt freshman Elijah Pritchett, who just didn't get a ton of playing time last year. So a ton of inexperience at a very, very important position, right? Especially when you consider that, back in August, the quarterback position was up for grabs. We weren't sure who the starter was ultimately going to be. Jalen Milroe has obviously taken the reins and run with it, but so I think you start with just maybe the inexperience and just the fact that they didn't play a lot together. Now, as you move forward, they've played better. It's still not great. They've given up 35 sacks in 8 games. It's not ideal. And so at this point, offensive line's played better. Again, still not great. Now it's kind of, a lot of the sack problem has also been on Jalen Milroe a little bit, sometimes he steps into sacks, sometimes he steps out of clean pockets, and, whoever's playing spy is fast enough to run him down and get him on the ground because Milroe's got great foot speed. So, at this point, the sack thing is kind of an unfortunate feature as opposed to a fixable bug. So I would anticipate LSU is going to get some sacks on Saturday. It's just a question of how many.
What has been the feedback on Tommy Rees? What's been the feeling on him here in year one?
The general energy of Tommy Rees, it can kind of it can change, drive to drive. If they like what he's doing and Alabama's moving the ball, they're moving it efficiently and consistently, great hire. At times Alabama has been a little inconsistent. They haven't been very efficient. They have especially, the first few games before the bye, or I guess the last few games before the bye, they have started very slow in games, punt, or field goal punt, or a turnover. And yeah, right. Like that's, how Alabama fans are, man. They're super passionate. And so, I think the entire operation, I think, has settled in a little bit. They've started to lean in a lot more to the offensive strengths. For the first few weeks, they were kind of playing everybody at receiver to try and figure out who the alphas were. Now I think they've kind of settled into a pretty consistent rotation. Milroe has just, quarterback's one of those where the more reps you get, the more good reps you get, I should say, the more confident you'll play. And he's playing some really good ball down the stretch before the bye weeks. So the offense it's not a world beater offense. Like, this is not the typical, Lane Kiffin, Steve Sarkisian offenses from Alabama's past. You don't have an NFL quarterback playing there like you've had the last 4 years. You went from Jalen Hurts to Tua to Mac Jones to Bryce Young. Jalen Milroe is very, very good. I'm not sure yet that he's an NFL caliber quarterback, but he's got a lot of attributes and strengths that can give defenses problems. So the offense is fine. But this is a matchup where, given the offense on the other side, Alabama's offense probably going to have to score 30 plus points. They haven't had to do that the last few games. But this is one of those matchups where it's like, look, like the offense is going to have to, bring their A game or bring the best performance that maybe they've had this season against the Power 5 opponent if Alabama wants to win this game.
Yeah, a guy like Jermaine Burton would have to have a big night, right? Tell me about how he's developed and kind of how he's evolved since being on campus.
Yeah, he's a Georgia transfer. This is his second year in the program. He was one of the leading receivers last year. Decided to come back this year, I think, just to kind of fine-tune some things, mature a little bit, because I think he's a guy that can go play in the league, right? He can go play on Sundays, but just a matter of consistency and a couple other small things here and there. He kind of started slow to the season, back when Alabama's offense was just trying to figure out what it was. I think, early in the season, Alabama wanted to be a run-first unit, back to the joyless murder ball days. They're not that. That's not exactly what you guys are going to see on Saturday, or if you've been paying attention at all throughout the year. But a guy like Jermaine Burton has really helped open up the offense a little bit. One thing about Jalen Milroe, we weren't sure how well he could throw the deep ball coming into this season. Turns out he's one of the best deep ball throwers in the country, and Jermaine Burton has helped him out a lot with that. He's a guy that can get separation, he can get downfield, and he can win contested catches. So then you combine that with a guy like Milroe who throws a very accurate deep ball. It's kind of one of those, backyard football, chuck it up, Jermaine's down there somewhere. And a lot of times that's helped open up the rest of Alabama's offense. We saw it against Texas A&M. He caught some deep balls against Arkansas and Tennessee that helped jumpstart the offense a little bit. And it wouldn't shock me at all, especially given some of the injuries that LSU's dealing with in the secondary, if they go to that again this season or this Saturday.
Cody, how real is the talk, and this is just from somebody outside of the market, curious, how real is the talk on Saban and how much is left? Does he get tired of answering those questions, or is this something that within Tuscaloosa is just understood how much time he has left? Just curious from somebody that's outside of it, what the feel is on this part of Saban's career.
It's funny. At the beginning of this season, we were kind of wondering the same thing. They're still recruiting at a high level, so it's not like his energy levels are low. I think sometimes he just kind of exhales deeply in press conferences, and we all kind of wonder, how much longer do you want to put up with this sometimes, right? But he seems really energized, and one thing that we've really noticed throughout the course of the season, he's really enjoying coaching this team. This is not – there's a lot of talent on this team, but they were maybe lacking experience at certain positions. And it's really kind of forced Saban to be, it's kind of forced him to pull out a lot of his best stuff when it comes to coaching. And I think we're seeing a lot of that, inexperienced quarterback at the beginning of the season. Now you look at it and he's, by passer rating, the second best quarterback in the SEC. I'm not sure how many people would have thought that in August. The defense lost, I think it was 8 of 11 starters from last year's team are now playing in the NFL. Statistically speaking, it's a better unit, and they've got a lot of youth at a lot of different places, and they're playing very, very well. It's a better pass rushing unit. For my money, it's a better coverage unit. They've got a lot of guys that play fast and play hard. Again, a little bit of a throwback, joyless murder ball defense. I think he's really enjoying this team. He's talked a lot about how he likes the togetherness of this team. He talks a lot about how much fun it is to kind of see this team grow over the course of the season. I mean, how many years in a row have you guys seen Alabama, a high-profile Week 1 matchup, they come out and just beat the brakes off of a Miami or a Louisville or somebody like that, and it's like, all right, Alabama's going to be really, really good this year. Their first high-profile matchup was against Texas, and they lost by 10 at home. Since then, they've kind of settled in, and they've done a lot of really good things, and they've made a lot of tremendous growth, and they've taken a lot of strides, and Saban's really enjoyed that this year. So obviously he's closer to the end than he is the beginning of his career, but the way he's been talking this year wouldn't shock me if he's got another 4 or 5 years left in him. I mean, he seems to really be enjoying this team, and they're still recruiting at a high level. I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon.
Does this LSU game kick up different emotion for him, just being closer to him and covering the week?
I think it does. I mean, publicly, he's going to be, let's focus on this game. Let's not do anything crazy. But I mean, even some of the players are like, yeah, this one's personal, given what LSU did last year, given where Alabama wants to go this year. It wasn't a guarantee that they would even be in a position like this, I think, at the beginning of the season. You ask Alabama fans after the Texas loss, the sky was falling. And then you especially ask them after, they had just an ugly performance Week 3 against South Florida down in Tampa. The sky was really falling then. But, now they've settled in. They've won, 6 straight games coming into this matchup, 5 of them over SEC opponents. Big win over A&M on the road. They beat a really good Ole Miss team, beat a really good Tennessee team. And so, now I think it's, I think this game means a lot just because of what it means in the context of the season, but also just given what happened last year. LSU won that game. They won the division. They knocked Alabama from basically the playoff, right? They finished number 5 at the end of the season last year. This is another one of those get-back games that Alabama really wants, and Saban may not come out and say it, but I'm sure he's feeling it the same way.
Yeah. Cody, one more before you get you out of here. What happens if LSU wins this game back-to-back years in Tuscaloosa? I mean, even from the LSU side, for a long time, it felt like that they were never going to get over the hump. If they beat them 2 years in a row, that will be a different territory for this LSU-Bama matchup. What would it feel like on that side?
Pandemonium.
Well, the sky will fall again, right? Yeah, I mean, you look at it too, and it's, no two-loss team has ever made the college football playoffs, so that would, a loss on Saturday would drop them to 7-2. That would effectively kill any talk of a potential national championship. I'd have to look up what the rules are for an SEC division tiebreaker, because now you'd have LSU, Ole Miss, and Alabama all have beaten each other. So what does that mean? Who gets to Atlanta, right? With, I guess there'd still be 3 weeks to play, so not everything's final, but that would be something we'd have to look into. But yeah, I mean, I think LSU fans, they would probably party over the rest of the night in Tuscaloosa. Alabama fans would, they'd probably have to come face to face with, a pretty good coach in Brian Kelly. Like that would be really impressive to not only beat Alabama back to back, but to come into Tuscaloosa and beat them too. Like that's, I'm sure Alabama fans wouldn't like that, but that would, not very many coaches have been able to do that, and so for Brian Kelly to be able to do that, that'd be very impressive. To be honest, I haven't even quite thought about what that would mean. Just because I am not sure what it would mean, right? I'm still, I guess, full disclosure, I'm very new on the Alabama beat, so just to contextualize a loss like that, I would probably have to lean on some more, experienced Alabama, beat writers, but it would be big. I'll say that much. It would be very big.
Yeah. Brace yourself, Cody. You would have yourself a great story if that happens come Sunday morning. Thank you for your time, man. Looking forward to Saturday night. As always, this usually produces some of the best football that college football can produce within a season. So I expect nothing less from Tuscaloosa on Saturday night. Thank you, man.
I appreciate the time, man. Thanks for having me.
Cody Goodwin, he covers Bama football over at 247. You can follow him on Twitter or on social media at Cody Goodwin. They're all over the place covering it and getting ready for Saturday night with LSU Bama. Thanks for tuning in to our premium LSU content right here on YouTube. If you want more of it, subscribe below.